Hey guys, what's the GP here today, and I'm doing a new YouTube channel based on how much I love roller coasters. And today I'm going to be doing a ranking of the 17 coasters at Cedar Point. This is all in my opinion. I feel like I should probably point that out. And my whole channel from here on out is going to be mainly opinion based. There's not going to be a lot of fact or reason to it. So, with that being said, let's start off at number 17, not including Pipe Scream, even though it's listed on the Cedar Point website as a coaster. I'm not going to count it. We're starting off bottom 17, Wilderness Run by Intamin. This is your basic kind of kiddie coaster kind of ride. I guess it's the most kiddie coaster that Cedar Point has. Not really saying a lot, but it's pretty short. And Wilderness Run, and the next one I haven't ridden since, I don't know, maybe a few years ago. So I honestly forget the general layout and all that, but I remember I didn't like this one as much as the next one, which number 16, Woodstock Express by Vekoma, the only Vekoma coaster in the entire park. So, at least as of now. Jokes. Anyways, Woodstock Express beats out Wilderness Run solely by a length. By time. I honestly forget both of these layouts, and I forget whether I hated them or loved them, but I don't think I'm ever going to ride them again, and that's basically why they're bottom two. Next, Cedar Creek Mine Ride. And from here on out, these are rides that I will always ride when I go to Cedar Point, no matter what, regardless of how much I dislike them or like them. This is Cedar Creek Mine Ride by Aerodynamics, and just your basic mine ride. I don't know. There's not much to say. It's fun enough to. I've found that it's mainly a walk on for me, at least. So I just happen to be in the area. It's kind of near the wilderness part, or the frontier town part of Cedar Point, kind of between there and the kind of Top Thrill Gemini area. So whenever I pass it, I'll ride it. I never have a bad time on it, but it's not really that memorable. So moving up, you'll notice a lot at the bottom there are a bunch of aerodynamics coasters. I guess, at least at this park. In general, I'm not a big fan of aerodynamics in their coasters, but you'll see. Coming up next, this is going to be a very controversial opinion. The first ever hypercoaster in the world, Magnum XL 200. Man, do I hate this ride. I've heard it's pretty good when you don't tighten the lap bars, the restraints, but I haven't tried that out yet. This is coming winter, so it's in an off season, so I haven't ridden it since. I've heard some of those tips, but man, do I hate this ride. I think a few of the redeeming factors. Let me just list off the positives real quick. I don't really like the loading deck. I was gonna say I like that, but man, it's crowded and unorganized. I like the line leading up to the loading deck. It's very kind of. It's got a lot of trees and there's some vending machines, whatever. I like the hill going up. I always love lift hills. Just being able to see a lot of the park, being able to take it all in before you plummet. I like that aspect of it. Uh, and the at least the last tunnel. I don't know if the other tunnels have it, but the last tunnel as of this year, 2019, they added in some visual effects and some sound effects, and I think that's pretty cool. Other than that, everything else on this coaster is either average or terrible. I've never got, like I said, I haven't used the tips, but I've never gotten a good ride where after the ride I felt okay. I always am so hurt in my thighs. It's terrible, it's rough, and I just every time I ride it, I always ask myself why. But I want to continue riding it just because you kind of have to when you go to Cedar Point. Every coaster at Cedar Point is a must, basically. Anyways, moving on, another aerodynamic coaster, Corkscrew. Another rough ride. I think it might be the way aerodynamics makes their restraints and all that, but man, Corkscrew just feels old to me. It just feels like it's not as smooth as a coaster should be running if it were built now. That's kind of my thoughts on it. It's pretty when you're walking under it. That's a cool feature how low it is to where you're walking, but I don't see any other point in it. The hill isn't that big, so that lift hill I'm not too big on. Uh, but it's kind of fun just riding it with your friends and hearing them hate it too. It's always fun. Next, Iron Dragon, another aerodynamic coaster. This isn't low because I don't like it. It's low because it's not really that memorable. So it's a suspended coaster. It kind of swings through the forest and it goes over some water. It's a nice ride. I wish I got to experience the VR. I don't think they're doing that anymore though, so I don't think I'll ever get to experience that. But that might have bumped it up on the list. But as of right now, it's fairly low down in the last half of it because it's forgettable. It's all right. I prefer Bat at Kings Island, but that's just me. Next, the only PTC coaster at Cedar Point, Blue Streak. Um, it's fine. It's your average wooden coaster, in my opinion. I appreciate that they have bins, which not every coaster at Cedar Point has bins, which is annoying. But I appreciate that this has bins. It's got a nice hill. Um, I like the turnaround. It's just kind of some airtime and ejector float, mostly ejector airtime, and it's kind of whatever, It's your average run of the mill wooden coaster. Coming up next, Aerodynamics Gemini dueling coaster. I enjoyed this one quite a bit actually. I love the idea of racing another coaster, and I like the lift hill on this one. And I like the helix towards the end, so that's always fun. It's just it's smoother, and I think I like it because it's got the steel tracks if I'm not mistaken. So pretty nice. Next is Rougarou B&M. First B&M on the list so far. It's a good coaster. It used to be Mantis, I believe. It was a standing up coaster, and then it got converted to just a floorless coaster. Not bad. I wish I got to ride the stand up coaster, but I didn't. So I still need to get a stand up coaster credit. Whatever. I'll get that. Anyways, it's alright. It's a little rough, if anything. Not super rough, though. Nothing to complain too hard about. It's just typical coaster. I love the loop at the beginning, and I kind of like it gets kind of compact toward the end. Everything is very close quarters, and I kind of like that. And then but it just kind of ends, and it's kind of a weird ending. But it's very average, if not above average. Going next, another B&M, Gatekeeper. This was the coaster added in 2014. This was the first coaster that I was kind of keeping tabs on as a kid. Like the first coaster I would see and search out updates for. Because this came at around time I was first super into coasters. So, but Gatekeeper is the wing coaster. It's all right. I'm not a. I never really found any interest in head choppers, so the keyholes don't really do too much to me. Um, and I haven't really found one side to be better over the other. So it's all just personal preference. And this one, it's got floater, but not enough to kind of bump it up higher on the list. It's a very, 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 like, I want to say average B&M. Whereas Rougarou is an average coaster, it's probably a subpar B&M. But Gatekeeper is above average coaster by quite a bit, but it's an average B&M. So that's kind of what I'll say about that. Coming up next is I think our first Intamin coaster on the nope Wilderness Run, never mind. But first actual, I'd say, Intamin coaster, Wicked Twister. I'm a big fan of launches. I love launches. They're very enjoyable. I think it just gives you a sense, another thrill. And honestly, if Wicked Twister was just a coaster where they brought you up to one side of it, dropped in, you kept going kind of like that, and there was no launch, this would be so low down. But because of the launch, it brings it up. I love the launch, and I love the 90 degrees, going both forwards and backwards. And I think it's a very smooth ride. I think they could have done this. They could have cheaply made it and made it super rough, but it's not. It's very smooth, and I enjoy that. Coming up next, Valrated. No. Yes. No. I skipped one. My bad. B&M still. Raptor. Raptor was my first ever coaster with a loop. So it's got sentimental value, but I think, and that's why it's up so high. If it were objective, I'd put it a bit lower. I think it's a little too rough, and I think it's a little too loud. But other than that, I think every other element of this coaster is solid. I love the intensity, and I love the loops. And I believe there are a few inversions besides the loops. Don't quote me on that. Like I said, it's been probably a few months. This is just the off season, so this is my first season going to Cedar Point more than once, and before this, I'd only gone 2 other times in my life. So this is my first time going like 2 or 3 times in a year. So I'm getting better as an enthusiast, I think. Coming up next though is Valrated, which is going to be controversial, because I heard a lot of people did not like Valrated. It was kind of more, not they didn't like it, but it was a disappointment. And I think it could have been so much more. I think it could have been a lot better. But it is super solid for me. I'm a sucker for the front row seat on Valrated. When you get on that front row seat, you get anywhere, I think, on that front row, and you hang there at the dive. They hang you there for the 3 seconds. I think that is one of the scariest elements on any of these coasters at Cedar Point. And I think it is very, very cool element on that coaster. And I'll be honest, when I first heard about it, because I was like 15, I'd only been on like 2 or 3 coasters with loops in my life. I thought it was super rare for a coaster to have loops, so I didn't think it'd have loops. When I got to it and it had loops, boy, was I shocked. It was so interesting to me. I thought, and I love there's not a lot of theming, but for Cedar Fair Park, it's got quite a bit. And I love the queue line, and it's got kind of a medieval theme to it, and even the loading portion, I think, too. So I think it's a super solid coaster, and I would not place it anywhere below my top 5. So moving on, Intamin. This is the first of 3 Intamins in a row. This is going to be controversial, I think. Maybe not, because I'd say once you get to where we are now at top 4, these are the 4 big coasters of the park. But first Intamin of this train is going to be number 4, Millennium Force. This was the first Giga coaster in the world, where Magnum XL 200 was the first Hyper. This is the first Giga. Should have called it Millennium Force 300. That would have been funny, I thought. But anyways, regardless, it's a super solid coaster. I love the cable lift. Man, watching that cable lift when you're in line for the front row, it's super cool. Getting a lakeside seat on that cable lift, man, it just feels satisfying. And that drop, I wasn't allowed to ride it the first time I went to Cedar Point, because my dad said it was too steep. But it's not that steep. I forget what the exact degree is, but it just feels I always feel like I'm kind of flung out, even though I know I'm not. I'm very GP in how I like coasters and how I feel about coasters, but man, I love Millennium Force. It feels so fast and it's so tall. I mean, 300 feet was such a feat, like such a spectacular feat for the time. I wasn't even born then, Jesus Christ. But it's still an amazing feat today. It's not like because we're building Stratocoasters and like King Ka and Pop Throw that those make this any less special. This is still the first Giga, and there's a reason it has won so many Golden Ticket Awards. All right. Anyways, after that Millennium Force kind of praise, number three, top three coasters now. The second in the Intamin run, we got Top Throw Dragster. I honestly would love to put this at my number two, maybe at my number one, but it is so short, 17 seconds, and it doesn't need more than that. It launches you 120 miles, and you guys know the stats. It's super crazy stats. First, I think it's the first ever Stratocoaster, full circuit Stratocoaster. Don't quote me on that, but I think so. But wow, it's over so quick. That is my only complaint. It, I feel like they could have done something, and I know it helps capacity for it to be so short, but I think it could have easily been, at the time, even the best. Like at the time until now, could have been the best coaster in the world if it would have done something else after just the drop. But regardless, the anticipation, the I love the restraints. They're really nice restraints, and then you go up, and if you're in the second train, okay, first of all, you have to get a front row seat. There's no other way. I would not have rated this as high as I did if I didn't ride the front seat like I did this year. It was maybe a mid-tier coaster for me, and then I rode the front seat. So anyways, you're in the second train, waiting to go up. You see the first train about to launch, and they launch, and then you know you're next. The anticipation and the fear in you is so powerful. Your heart starts beating, and you can feel it. You can feel it start beating, and then you get up there, you hear the engines revving, and you just don't know what to do besides hold on. And I think that's what they say, arms back, blah blah blah, all that stuff. It's super kind of, it's kind of surreal to know what you're about to go through, and it's all going to be over in 17 seconds in a way. And then you you kind of fall back just a little, just to click you into place, and that's when you know the yellow to green lights are about to go on, and it goes on the tower and in your little stoplight. And as soon as that happens, you put your arms up and you shoot. You are gone. You are at the top of that hill before you even know it. Hopefully you get a chance to see Canada, but if not, man, it's still crazy. And then you're immediately, you do some sort of spiral on your way down, which I think is super cool, and you just see yourself plummeting down, and it's almost like free falling. And then it kind of ends. But wow, those 17 seconds just took me about a minute to explain that, if not more. It's just crazy to know what you're going through. All right, second, silver, first loser, I guess. Another Intamin coaster, Maverick. Super good coaster, super solid coaster, super fast-paced coaster. I like to call the first lift hill a launch. A lot of people hate that. I think it's a launch. But I guess, and I think they classify it as a launch, technically, but a lot of coaster enthusiasts don't like that. So, regardless, first hill, you go, and they have 6 trains. So the trains have a small number of people. It's only, I don't know, 2 or 4 per car, but they have 6 trains, so it kind of balances out that way. You go up the hill, and because you're going so fast up the hill, and then it's a 95-degree drop, you, especially if you're on that back seat, you are flung out. It is crazy. And then it's just nonstop. There are no loops, but it's just nonstop craziness. And I think this these last these top 4 coasters prove that you don't need any loops necessarily to be an amazing coaster. Loops are kind of, they help your looks, but I don't think they really do much in the overall coaster rating. And then you get to about the end, where you think it's the end, and it launches you. You hear the ding 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 from like a railroad track, and it's crazy. You're off again. It launches you powerful. I think that's where it hits its max speed, and it's just nonstop craziness. And then it's kind of over. And I think the only downside to this is that it isn't number one. And there's really nothing bad that I can say about this ride. I guess the only thing I'd say that's bad is it's super super busy all the time. It's always got like a 1-ish hour wait, but it's still super fun coaster, and I think it deserves that wait. So, and it's worth the wait. And finally, last coaster, the only RMC in the whole park, and you guys knew the coaster. You guys knew what it was going to be. You guys knew what was going to be number one. Steel Vengeance was previously Mean Streak. I never got to ride that. But I rode Steel Vengeance. And first time I rode it, Coaster Mania, opening year, so 2018. Coaster Mania 2018. So I get early access to this coaster. I'm still waiting there. I think it was for 2 hours. So before everybody else is let into the park, it was still a 2-hour wait. It was crazy hyped, this coaster. And you still go there, and it's still a 2-hour wait. It's crazy. Now I will say, I like to play every coaster safe. I like to put everything in the locker. So I always go through these lines, and my friends and I, we go through these lines without our phones. So it's kind of boring once we run out of things to talk about and games to play. And that's probably the worst part of this coaster. But when you're waiting there at night, it is weird. It's so dark. The only things there are lanterns, and it's so dark. And I will say, I hate probably my biggest fear is spiders, and there are a bunch of spider webs and spiders all around the queue, which I hate. But like once you get to the actual coaster, you get in there, and they've got a little like zipper thing. I don't know if you put your phones in there or just your glasses, either or. Well, first you have to go through a metal detector, and you get stamped, either red or green. Then you go up, you get on the coaster, and then you hear an audio clip from whatever person train you're riding, and then you go up, the coaster, and you go down. It is super loud. There are memes about how loud it is. And then you go down this 90-degree drop, and from then on, you are non-stop moving. It is the craziest, I'd say, ride I've ever ridden. Now, I haven't ridden that many coasters. I've only got 46 credits. But it is still crazy. I mean, they've done stuff that I didn't even think was legitimately like possible or feasible, at least. Like the Outer Bank turn. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know you could hybrid a wooden and a steel until I heard about Steel Vengeance. And I didn't know, even if I did, I didn't know hybrids would be able to do all these inversions that kind of go through the ride, and it's crazy, and all these bunny hills, and it's got so much airtime, and I could keep talking and talking about all this stuff in my GP terms. But there are so many other videos that go into so much more depth and explain it so much better than I would ever be able to give credit to. So that is my ranking of the 17 roller coasters at Cedar Point. And I know this is my first video, so nobody ever in the world is going to see this. But if you do, consider sticking around for any future videos I upload. You don't have to subscribe or like the video or anything, as long as you kind of know that I am now would like to formally join the coaster enthusiast cult society. I'm here, and I will be doing update videos on coasters that I know of. I keep track of, such as Orion at Kings Island, Giga Coaster coming to Kings Island. So, thank you guys so much for watching. If you watched till the end, the 26 minute video, I really appreciate it. All right, see ya.